Welcome to Advanced Weapon Tactics. I'm your host, Lil Maos. Here's my brother Matt, and today I got a new sword for you. This is a nice Han Dynasty, and it is made by Longquin Longswords in China, and they make very good weapons. And this is based off the Han Dynasty. It's a Chibi sword. It's about 26-inch blade length. It's Damascus steel and it's full tang. This sword has a nice distal taper, so that means it gets smaller towards the point. It's made out of Damascus steel, and it has a full tang construction, so this really shouldn't break in my tests. And zoom right in, it's got this nice etching, and I really love this sword. So, Longquin Longswords, if you want one, can't go wrong. They make other things besides swords. They make bows, spears, different things, and they make all different types of Chinese weapon as well as Japanese. So, on first glance, it is pretty sharp. Now, with the scabbard, this is the biggest, I would say, disappointment about this sword. And I would say that because when you go to sheathe the sword, it gets stuck about there. So you gotta almost force it in. And when you do that, and it's also hard to pull out, it's not very easy. When you do that, it scratches up the blade, and I've already noticed the blade got scratched up a little bit, but I mean, it's Damascus steel, it's not gonna break, this scabbard isn't gonna break it, but if you have a beautiful sword like this, you really don't wanna scratch it because of a cheap scabbard. But it's what it came with it, so I'm very happy. And then just zoom in on this. I really love how this is cord wrapped. It's nice and strong. I've done many strikes with it, and it hasn't come loose. So, I mean, I wouldn't know how to tie something like this, but it works. You got the pommel, which features, it looks like a foo dog, but I don't know, it's just cool. And, it's got all different kind of Chinese mythology on it, and it's just a very nice sword.
Well, I definitely like the pattern going on here in the middle of the sword. And this is really sharp Damascus steel. So you saw what the $15 sword did to that. And I have no doubt that this is going to do exactly the same. Actually, not exactly the same. A lot more damage. I mean, this is a pretty tough sword, and it's going to do a lot of damage to this skull.
Another thing I want to point out about that is, see how Matthew, right there, has both of his hands on the sword? I really like that in a sword because it gives it versatility, okay? And when you're able to do that, you're able to get behind two-hand tricks.
Yeah.
And then take off one hand. Take off one hand. How would you say? You're about my height, my weight. One-handed. You think that's definitely a one-handed?
I mean, yeah, you can definitely switch between one hand, two hand, no problem.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about this sword.
Lil Maos presents Advanced Weapon Tactics, the show that tests the lethality and survival skills of weapons, with improvised tactics and truthful reviews. Do not try this at home. Viewer discretion is advised.
So we're going to go for a 45-degree angle strike, two-handed, and then we're going to see how that does. And if it does well, we're also going to do a stab, and then we're going to go for the decap. So Matt, give me a countdown.
1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, it's bleeding everywhere.
So you can see the blood. We popped the blood vessel, the blood bag. This guy is just bleeding out. It went through all of the paper, and it did, in fact, crack the coconut. But I didn't see as much damage as that cheap $10 sword. With the cheaper sword, it was a scimitar, so that's more based on cutting, where this is more of a stabbing weapon. So we're going to try to reprop this up, and then we're going to go for a stab and see how well that does, because that's more of a stabbing weapon. And that's how, typically the Chinese fight. They fight with the point of their sword, whereas with the Japanese katana, it's mostly slashes. So we're gonna reprop this up and see how it goes.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So the one on the chin went right through the rubber. It doesn't look like it went through any of the newspapers.
No, I definitely cut it. It's just down at an angle, and then it just glanced off the coconut. You're really not gonna be able to see in there. I'm sorry, but you gotta take our word for it. It popped the blood vessel that would be right in your esophagus, but again, it glanced right off of the skull. So, Matt, why don't you unwrap that and let's get down to the coconut and actually really assess the major skull damage that this did. So Matt's just unraveling the plastic, and you know, it definitely popped that bag. That was all the blood that you've seen going over it. There's no blood even really in that bag. Do you see any?
No, there's no blood.
All right, so how do you think the skull did with that hit, that strike?
So as you can see, it didn't go all the way through like the other sword did. I think that might be part because the stand actually like broke on us, and there's not enough like what do you call it, like grip on it. Like it's not very stable up there. So I think if it was a little bit more stable and we could actually land, you know, a solid hit when it was actually stable, I think this would have done a lot more damage to it.
Right, but that's supposed to simulate, you know, a real human, because they're not just gonna, all the force isn't really gonna go into the human when you're attacking and striking. But as you can see, this is a fractured skull right here, and I would have to say, if not, that is probably that I would definitely deem that a kill, but it might take a little more time for the guy to die. Whereas the other one, it went clean through the entire skull. That was an instant kill. One of the stabs went, and it went through. It
the
made
outside,
this,
like
yeah,
casing.
It really took a chunk out of it, and if you, it cracked into the actual skull, so you can get in there, but it's a very small opening. That would also, I would probably say, would be a kill. If not, I mean, that guy is definitely gonna bleed out if he doesn't seek medical attention. But overall, that was a pretty good hit, and I don't know. What do you think of these heads? You know, we tested both of them today, and what do you really think of these? And should we test them again, or should we not? I don't know. Leave that in the description below. So I just want to do a little closing statement on the Chibi sword. We've experienced from our test that it wasn't able to stab or slice as good as a $15 sword, whereas the Chibi sword was about $175. That's from the Red Cleft movie from Jet Li, and it's modeled after that. And the wiggling was because the pommel was loose, because it's just threaded in. So when I hit it, it must have loosened up the pommel. I just unscrewed it, screwed it back on, and there's no, you know, shake or give. But that almost worries me about the quality of that sword, because it means the tang is just threaded in it, and it was almost, I don't know if it was soldered on because the wood was around it. I don't really want to mess with it or go into it or break it because it was expensive, but you know, you get what you pay for, 175 bucks. Or for a nice sword. I love this sword. I would use it for more, you know, show, practical, tai chi, you know, kung fu, different stuff like that. Whereas the $15 sword, hey, breaks, I'm gonna fuck. $15, I'll go buy another one, you know what I mean? And it just outperformed a $175 sword. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but really, for $15, you can't go wrong. So Matt, why don't you think the Chibi sword at $175 was able to be outperformed by a $15 blade? What do you think for the reason why?
I don't know. A lot of it has to do with our targets. They're not really stable, I think. And the Chibi is more of like a stabbing weapon, and you need it to be stable for you to get a clear stand, you know, a clear stab on it. As where, you know, the other sword, the scimitar, it's a lot more for the slashing end, and you can, you know, you don't need really a stable target for that.
Yeah, and
so
another thing is the $15 sword was a lot sharper, and I think that's what gives it the edge over a more expensive sword. So you've seen that outperform a $175 sword. I can't be more impressed with 15 bucks, because I bought it and I thought it was going to be crap. Comes in the mail. You've seen it perform.
Yeah.
That's just awesome. $15, get your own. Remember to comment, rate, and subscribe.
Thanks for watching, guys.